Namaskar. Will the current Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, quit over the grooming gangs saga? Why is he connected with this? We're going to unravel that and many other truths that are going to shock you. Please like this video because we have put a lot of time and effort documenting all the research that has been compiled thus far. There are lots of links and lots of videos for you to take a look at. Look at the description section to get more on it. So here we go. UK's grooming gangs. When did this start? In the late 70s? Late 80s? Well, if it is late 70s, that's at least 50 years old. 3 or 4 generations of grooming gang victims as well as perpetrators are filling up United Kingdom. What is going on? For decades, networks of predominantly British Pakistani men targeted underage white girls, exploiting and abusing them while authorities failed to act, often prioritizing racial harmony over justice. The UK has faced several high-profile child sexual exploitation scandals, most notably in 3 cities, Rotherham, Rochdale, and Telford. I'm going to show you these cities on the map of United Kingdom. So if in case you are in the United Kingdom and you live close by, you may be the next target. Already many Punjabi Sikh girls were also abducted by the grooming gangs, especially because they would talk to them as if they would talk to them in Punjabi, and these girls would think that this is a nice looking Punjabi boy, and they would probably tell them that they are Hindus too. All sorts of things have happened. 250,000 at least girls raped and abused. This is the white girls, but in the Punjabi community, many of them are afraid to come out and tell their stories. This has been happening for a long time now. It's time that this full stop is put to it. By the way, I'm very disappointed with Rishi Sunak also. Just before he became Prime Minister, he jumped up and down, swore that he was going to fix this thing. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. So I have not got much hopes on what the Labour Party is going to do, but you can always hope. Place the facts in front of the public and see where things go. Now, the groomers will pose as friends or boyfriends, lure victims with gifts, attention, drugs, and alcohol, the usual mishmash things that impresses an impressionable girl, maybe in their pre-teens to teens. This is where these people are using all kinds of things to attract them. And once they catch them, then they start abusing them and controlling them by giving threats against them or their families, often passing victims around the gang for repeated abuse. Here are the 3 cities that we are talking about: Rotherham, Rochdale, and Telford. Rotherham is near Manchester, and Telford is near Birmingham, and Rochdale is also near Manchester. These are all the areas where the South Asians, all 3 countries, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, and Indians used to congregate. Southall is another place near London. But the point I'm trying to make is that this has been going on for over 50 years, and many of them, even convicted ones, have been let off with a slap on the wrist. I'm going to cover some cases with you, and that will, basically chill. This will freeze your spine when you see how much has happened, and the British government as well as the law and order, I should say, ignored it, turned a blind eye, and now this is going to perhaps consume one Prime Minister. So reports of on-street grooming and abuse date back to the 1970s. The first issue, it gained attention for the first time in 2003 when a Labour MP, Anne Cryer, highlighted young girls being groomed by Asian men outside schools. Cryer faced accusations of racial bias, threats and backlash from her own party for raising this alarm. Now, that was 2003. In 2004, Channel 4 produced Edge of the City, a documentary capturing grooming gangs in Bradford. Remember, guys, I told you 3 cities. Bradford was not one of them. So this is pretty pervasive in United Kingdom. The film was pulled from broadcast amidst fears that it would bolster far-right groups, silencing an early opportunity to expose the abuse. This was 20 years ago. Andrew Norfolk of the Times uncovered a pattern of abuse after investigating cases across multiple cities in 2010. Between 1997 and 2010, that is a period of 13 years, he found that 53 of the 56 men convicted of grooming-related crimes were Asian, with most being Pakistani Muslims. And I'm going to talk to somebody who knows much more about Pakistan, about this problem in Pakistan itself, because this is not something that would have just started in United Kingdom. It would have started in Pakistan itself. Let's take a look at Rotherham. An estimated 1,400 girls, primarily from care homes, were abused in Rotherham between 1997 and 2013. I'm sorry, guys. I probably am mangling the pronunciation of Rotherham. I don't know exactly how to say it. Let's leave it at that. Abuse included gang rape, physical torture, trafficking, and severe emotional trauma. Survivors faced lifelong trauma due to institutional failures and lack of justice. Evidence of abuse first surfaced in the 1990s when care home managers investigated taxi drivers picking up children. Why would the taxi drivers pick up children? This is where the problem started. And you know that a preponderance of immigrants tend to take up jobs like driving taxis around. Is this a hint that you should be careful, especially girls, when they get into taxis? Reports identifying perpetrators were provided to police and council from 2001 onwards, but they were largely ignored. Independent inquiry led by Alexis J. revealed systemic abuse and failures by the authorities. I mean, if I were the person acting on this, I would fire half of the British order as well as the judges who were very lenient. This thing needs deep cleansing, guys. This is not a surface level change. This needs a serious amount of cleansing. I don't know what this Labour government is going to do. It's going to start by Keir Starmer resigning. Why? I'll tell you in just one moment. The irony is that the authorities feared accusations of racism and prioritized the town's reputation over child welfare. Fear of being labeled racist and sexist attitudes towards working class victims hindered action. New police inquiries led to the conviction of 19 men and 2 women in 2016 and 17 for crimes dating back to the 1990s. Now we are into the second city, Rochdale. The Rochdale child sex abuse ring involved underage teenage girls in Rochdale, Greater Manchester, England. 9 men were convicted of sex trafficking and other offences including rape, trafficking girls for sex, and conspiracy to engage in sexual activity with a child in May 2012. This resulted in Greater Manchester Police launching Operation 𝗣𝗏𝗏 and other operations to investigate further claims of abuse. A victim of Rochdale grooming gang has said she was raped more than 100 times from the age of 12 and felt let down by the police. Rochdale, as of 2024 January, a total of 42 men had been convicted, resulting in jail sentences totaling close to 432 years. 47 girls were identified as victims of child sexual exploitation during the initial police investigation. I have to read this because I don't want to get any of the data wrong. The men were British Pakistanis, which led to the discussion on whether the failure to investigate them was linked to the authorities' fear of being accused of racial prejudice. I mean, one is chance often happening, 2 is a coincidence. When you have hundreds, how can these people ignore that? There have been several reviews and reports written about the Rochdale child sexual abuse cases, including a Home Affairs Select Committee report that was published in 2013. In fact, I think I have done a couple of episodes with Pandit 𝗔𝗍𝗍 𝗪𝗏 on this very issue, especially when things look promising when the Conservatives were in power. A 2024 report on child sex exploitation in Rochdale from 2004 to 13 found that there was compelling evidence of widespread abuse and that Greater Manchester Police and Rochdale Council had failed to properly investigate these cases, leaving girls at the mercy of their abusers. While there were successful prosecutions, the report said that the investigations only scraped the surface of what had happened and that many abusers had gone unpunished. 𝗪𝗏𝗙 𝗔𝗚𝘄𝑆, the Rochdale grooming gang ringleader involved in abusing or raping 74 underage girls, remains in the UK 9 years after receiving a deportation order. Why the hell was this guy not thrown back to Pakistan? Rauf was released in 2014 after serving just 2.5 years of a 6-year sentence. Despite his crimes, Rauf continues to reside near his victims, raising serious concerns about their safety and well-being. Authorities did nothing because they did not want to rock the boat of racial tensions. Now we go to the third city, Telford. A decades-long scandal in Telford, Shropshire, involving Pakistani men convicted of sexually exploiting local female minors between 2007 and 2009. While media reports had suggested that there were 100 or more victims and around 200 suspects, the Sunday Mirror reported in March 2018 that up to 1,000 may have been affected, with some even murdered in incidents dating back to the 1970s. So again, the window has to start from 1970s and look up until now, period of 50 years, how these grooming gangs have operated and gotten away with just about murder. According to the Home Office, as of 2015, Telford had the highest rate of minor exploitation cases of any town or city in the United Kingdom. A report from a 3-year inquiry into the scandal was released in July 2022. It revealed that more than 1,000 girls had been abused over 40 years. The report also revealed that many of them were reported to the council but were ignored. Victims were often blamed with excuses that they were willingly prostituting themselves, and perpetrators were emboldened by the lack of police action. In a series of trials stretching over 2 years and concluding in May 2013, 7 men were convicted of sexual offences against 4 girls aged 13 to 16. The offences included rape, controlling child prostitution, causing child prostitution, and trafficking for prostitution. The ringleader of the gang was Abdel Edi Ali, along with his brother Mubarak Max. The pair offered their victims cannabis, alcohol, and money to encourage them to have sex. Similar to Rochdale and Rotherham, authorities in Telford failed to fulfill their duties, allowing the exploitation of minors to continue unchecked for years. Now I'm going to play a video of what happened in Rochdale, a real shocker, I tell you.
One of the very first was from a grandfather who rang from Rotherham, who wanted to talk about his granddaughter. 1 month after her 13th birthday, she'd gone to school and then gone missing, and the school had rung her mum, who'd immediately rung the police, who'd said, "Don't worry, love, she'll turn up as soon as she gets hungry." She didn't turn up that afternoon, that evening, and at 2:30 in the morning, the next morning, a woman on the other side of Rotherham had picked up the phone and dialed 999 because she'd heard a young girl screaming in the house next door. Police had gone round to the house. They found this 13-year-old girl with another young girl. She was almost completely naked, she was blind drunk, and she was with 7 adult Pakistani men. She was drunk and leery. And South Yorkshire Police arrested the 13-year-old girl for being drunk and disorderly. They took her back to the station, put her in the cells, eventually charged her, and she was convicted. They didn't even question the men as to why they were in a house with a 13-year-old girl who was nearly naked in the early hours of the morning.
Do you see the injustice here? 7 men were involved in that room, and none of them were even charged with anything, and the girl was arrested for drinking, underage drinking maybe. But don't you think that this is not something that one policeman would have decided to do? Rather, it must have been something like a policy in the city. We'll have to wait and see what the investigation turns up. Basically, what he's saying is captured in the video here. 2 13-year-old English girls were drunk in the house without clothes with 7 Pakistani immigrants. The cops arrested 2 minor girls because they were drunk. British police turned a blind eye to grooming gangs and ignored the plight of their very young victims. Now, it didn't stop there. This matter was also discussed in the United Kingdom Parliament, and here is the video about that. 250,000 cases. 250,000 cases. Blood boils when I think about it.
But accept that if we extrapolate nationally the Jay report on Rotherham and other reports on Telford and Oxford, there appear to have been upwards of 250,000 young white girls raped in this century, very largely by Muslim men. And given these girls are usually raped several times a day for years, so, my lords, what is the government's answer to the Chief Constable of Northumberland, of Northumbria, who has just said that there is every likelihood that these grooming gangs are operating in every one of our major cities? So, my lords, what is the government doing to prosecute those in authority who turned a blind eye to all this because they were afraid of being Islamophobic and so on? And what is it doing to compensate and help these victims mentally?
This was the report presented in the British Parliament that over 250,000 white women and young girls have been sexually assaulted, largely by Muslim men over the past 25 years, because it said in this century. And the scale of the abuse has reportedly left the entire Parliament stunned, highlighting the severity and systemic nature of the crisis. The disclosure has intensified demands for stricter measures, accountability from law enforcement, and safeguarding vulnerable populations to prevent further exploitation. Now, all this stuff has happened, and for a period of time, Mr. Keir Starmer was one of the prosecutors, public prosecutors. I'm going to come to that in just a minute. So here are the conclusions. Across the country, victims faced horrific abuse, including gang rapes, beatings, branding, and torture. Many were threatened with violence to prevent them from speaking out. Police councils and charities often ignored victims or punished those who raised concerns. Whistleblowers were silenced and sometimes sent to diversity training for pointing out the racial dynamics of the abuse. Files were destroyed, evidence went missing, and even deals were allegedly made between police and abusers to protect criminals. Despite reports, investigations, and trials, justice remains elusive. Many victims see their abusers walking free after short prison sentences. Journalists, activists, and survivors continue to fight for accountability. Few officials responsible for the failures have faced consequences, with some moving into new roles or retiring with pensions intact. In Rotherham alone, 265 allegations of police misconduct were investigated, involving 47 officers, yet only 5 faced penalties and none were dismissed. GB News' investigative work has led to arrests, deselections of political candidates, and exposure of officials complicit in the cover-ups. However, resistance remains, with mainstream voices hesitant to confront the racial aspects of the scandal. The grooming gangs scandal is not just a story of abuse, but of institutional failure, political correctness, and deep betrayal of vulnerable children. As survivors and whistleblowers push for justice, the fight continues to ensure those responsible, both abusers and enablers, are held accountable. Like I said, Keir Starmer is right in the eye of the storm because he was the public prosecutor and evidently he had let many such cases slide. So we'll wait and see what happens. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.